And welcome everybody. Yes, we're in a room, there's two screens, but I'm very much looking forward to sharing a couple of the insights around ELIXIR Communities with you all today. As David has said, Clare is here with me as the scientific officer at the Hub, and she will also be presenting some of the communities once we get there. But to start off with, some welcome and context. So as it has been said, this webinar is part of the Tech Team Webinar Series 2023. We're here today for the second edition, 16th of February Communities. If you have missed the first version on the Tech Team overview, this is now available on YouTube. You can watch it using the link on the slides. Those will also be shared later on. And please do join us for the other platform editions coming on later in the year. We have mentioned ELIXIR's code of conduct, so just a reminder for everybody that we value each other's perspectives. We adopt a zero-tolerance approach to harassment and discrimination. We maintain ethical standards, and we'll apply honesty and integrity in the dealing of any transgression against the code. So overall, we're committed to making ELIXIR events collaborative, supportive, and enjoyable, and will ensure a respectful and inclusive environment. So if anything comes up, please do let us know and follow the respective channels. There's more information behind the QR code as well. And without further ado, where are communities located within the ELIXIR context? Some of you might have seen similar slides last month or in other occasions, but just as a reminder, ELIXIR is an intergovernmental organization that brings together life science resources, such as databases, software tools, training material, interoperability resources, compute resources, as well as data management support. And the goal of ELIXIR really is to coordinate bioinformatics resources from across Europe so they form a single infrastructure. And to achieve this, there's a structure in which we are working by ELIXIR bringing together groups of experts from different technological areas, scientific domains, as well as ELIXIR nodes. And some of the three main groupings of people are our platforms, communities, and focus groups. So before we dive into the communities for much longer and in more detail today, just a reminder to everybody, there's 5 ELIXIR platforms, and they bring together experts from nodes to develop ELIXIR's technical vision and coordinate activities in defined technical areas. And the 5 platforms are, as many of you know, and as you can see in the cycle, in the circle at the top right as well, our compute, data, tools, interoperability, and training platforms. I'm moving on to the focus groups, which are also existing within the ELIXIR framework. They're time-limited groups bringing interested parties together around a particular topic. They usually address an emerging area of interest for ELIXIR. They have a clearly defined goal, and some, but not all of these, can eventually become communities. To the right, you can see the list of the currently active focus groups. And if you're more interested in those, let us know or have a look at the respective websites. This is a visual that many of you have probably seen a couple of times in different occasions. It is the current ELIXIR Communities portfolio. The communities really are connecting infrastructure and life sciences. And they do that in a number of different groupings, all looking at different topics. So you can see in those different logos that are represented in the individual circles as well. So what about those ELIXIR communities? What's their purpose? What are they doing? They are formed around domain experts in ELIXIR nodes, and they can include non-ELIXIR partners as well. ELIXIR communities provide a mechanism for long-term collaborations with other S3s and large-scale initiatives, and they really drive service development and uptake in the ELIXIR platforms and the wider community. They're also providing a framework to develop and maintain community standards. And as you can see, they really do, in one way or another, interact and work together with the platforms in a bi-directional manner. I did want to not miss this slide. It's a bit of a different angle on what the purpose of the communities is. So really, it's about enabling ELIXIR to capture user needs into formal requirements. The communities also drive service development and uptake. So this is all around standards, tools, and workflows in user communities for alignment and collaboration. And there's also a lot around supporting collaborative standard development, fostering collaboration between nodes via transnational expert networks, facilitating consortium building for funding applications, and providing mechanisms for long-term collaborations with other ESFRIs and larger scale initiatives. So when looking at the ELIXIR Communities portfolio from a different angle, what you can see on this slide is really the journey that they're going through in their maturity. So we can see that some of the ELIXIR communities, the ones that you see at the top right corner, have existed for a very long time. They have had interactions and activities running for more than 6 years from when they were first installed or kind of emerged. Then they did, most of them publish a white paper, which identifies and also puts onto paper what the community goals and ideas and specific working areas are, and they will then have worked on certain different implementation studies to put some of those goals into practice. You can see that there's also some very new communities on this slide. Biodiversity has only become a community in February at the beginning of this month, and we're currently also supporting the research data management group emerging community to develop further to then also become a community later on. The ELIXIR Communities Handbook is one of the main tools that we're using, and it outlines the role and purpose of ELIXIR Communities. It's used both internally but also externally to be considered as the one go-to document with regards to communities. It highlights some of the responsibilities and benefits, but also the related processes, and gives ideas as to how communities can be engaging with other ELIXIR structures and activities as well. So the 2023 version of this handbook is at the moment available on F1000. How do we support ELIXIR communities? Each community has 3 community co-leads. So you can see there's 3 figures at the very right of the slide. Those are people that are working in our individual different ELIXIR nodes, and they're representing the communities within the ELIXIR infrastructure. Then there's a hub communities coordinator. That's myself, Katharina Heil, and I have been very recently joined by Clare Gerrard as the communities science officer, communities and interoperability, as which she is supporting the communities portfolio in many different ways as well. And apart from the 2 of us, each community has membership drawn from the ELIXIR nodes as well as beyond, and there's a hub liaison contact person that is responsible and really supporting communities in their day-to-day activities from the hub. And you can see the 3 of us here, so Giselle, Claire, and myself. So we would like to talk about some of the more detailed aspects around the ELIXIR communities today. So as I have already said, there's 3 co-leads to each community. There's hub support that we're offering, and communities of members. And those members can be ELIXIR people, and they can also be non-ELIXIR people. But all of them are very welcome to contribute to the communities, and we can go into more details later on if you're interested on what it means to be a partner or a member in a community as well. It's really easy to join communities. There's a join button on the community website. Each community has one within the ELIXIR website itself. And you will then request to join, and we will be welcoming you, adding you, and you can then join the community meetings, which are happening regularly. And also on this slide, there's a link to the community's calendar. So if you would like more details, feel free to have a look there as well. What are the benefits of communities? We are supporting them with an annual face-to-face hybrid meeting. We also give support in writing a white paper, which then also gets published on F1000. Communities do have access to ELIXIR implementation study funding, and really there is a lot of networking, interaction, and visibility. And just to name a few of the activities and events that are happening where communities are very present is the ELIXIR All Hands meeting, as well as the Biohackathon. Communication, outreach, and branding is also one of the benefits, and this starts from supporting communities with designing their logo, but then also helping them to establish and put together their websites, mailing lists, online presence. And if interested, we are also happy to support them with webinars. There's also technical and scientific support, and this is not only the funding, but really, again, input and review via, for example, a scientific advisory board or the ELIXIR head of nodes. And it also really represents a great career development opportunity to be involved in a pan-European infrastructure specifically looking at a certain topic that the community is addressing. There's also some of the administrative and operational support which is really needed so that the community can function as a community itself. I did want to spend 2 minutes on the community impact, and impact can have many different flavors. So one of the things we would really like to help our communities with, and there's also some content covered in the handbook, is to think about how we can leverage the impact that all the communities are making in one way or another. So at the top right, you can just see some examples of what impact looks like. So this ranges from publications to policy sharing, but also patents, looking into job vacancies and connecting people. So just to highlight it, there is impact which can be measured in different ways, not only for communities, but across the whole portfolio. So the examples here I wanted to highlight are performance as well as impact. And some of it is a little more directly plannable and is also often quantitative, and that would most likely be the performance indicator. And the impact is often beyond the community's control. It's quantitative or qualitative. And we would be really keen to also help you identify what the impact or the performance is that you are making at the moment and how you could possibly change this in the future. So do get in touch to explore some of those opportunities together. And now we are very much looking forward to highlight and to tell you a little bit about all of the communities that we're having. 15 is the current number, and what you will now see is a relatively comprehensive slide deck where each community will be described in the form of what you can see on this slide. So we'll be talking about their mission and vision, their individual goals, as well as the implementation studies, which are community-led, which they have been working on since their establishment. Some communities will have more of these implementation studies, others will have less of them, and some will only be starting implementation studies in the next coming month. But all the information will be on the slide. There's also links to those if you're interested in learning more about them. The community leads are listed at the top right, also indicating the respective nodes they're working in. And we have put together some history around communities, which is mainly their white paper, but also any other relevant documents or points in time that we thought we would like to highlight. The website is linked as well, and if there's any specific comment, you will find that at the bottom right. And there is a second slide for each community where we're highlighting some of the most recent activities and outstanding successes that they have shown so far. So I'm going to start with the 3D Bioinfo community, and their mission and vision is to help to understand the 3D structure of macromolecules like proteins and DNA. And more specifically, that means that they're aiming to develop the infrastructure for fair structural and functional annotations. It's all about open resources, looking into developing tools, but also helping with the development of models. What you can see here at the top right, the 3D Bioinfo community has more than 3 co-leads, and this is based to the fact that they're working on 5 different activities, which will be highlighted on the next slide. They have published a white paper, which you can find online, and also possibly worth mentioning is that the 3D Bioinfo community emerged based on an already existing community. So we really have a very large mailing list and a lot of people that are engaging with the community itself as well. So the top right shows you all the different 5 activities that are being worked on, sometimes in parallel, but also collaboratively, and feel free to look at the website for more details. I've mentioned they're really big kind of community. So in 2021, we're really happy to welcome more than 300 participants to the annual general meeting of the community. And then in 2022, we went hybrid. So it was great to see some more people face to face, but still including everybody who couldn't travel for that occasion. There's a great webinar series with recordings available as well. So do have a look at that if you're interested. And when it comes to the scientific achievements, apart from many other things, I just wanted to highlight that this is a community that has and is engaged with a lot of databases, structural databases, and just to name a few, there's PDB and connections to things like beacons, but also protein-protein interaction data information. And just to say and show how that in a way uses and makes use of the ELIXIR research infrastructure to enable science. And I think most of you have heard of AlphaFold at this point. So without the data, there wouldn't be any AlphaFold. And I think that's just a really nice use case on showing how also the community effort brings together the people to then translate this into something useful for even more people and with a really huge scientific impact as well. The biodiversity community is next. You don't see a logo yet, but this is, as I said, because of the community only having been established at the beginning of this month. Nicely enough, though, they have existed as a group of people within ELIXIR for quite some time. And on the next slide, you can see that as such, they have actually already published a white paper where they are addressing some of the biodiversity challenges, specifically around the data that is involved and how that can be supported by an infrastructure such as ELIXIR. So their mission and vision is around understanding short and long-term changes in biodiversity support solutions. And I am moving on to just highlight that what they now want to be doing in their implementation study is to work towards acting as a coordinating entity for ELIXIR services relevant to biodiversity research. They're really keen to support the growth of the network of networks. And this basically means connecting all the different initiatives in the space of biodiversity that are ongoing at the moment across Europe already. In that context, it is also worth to highlight that partners and members of the community are currently involved in two large European projects. One of them is the Bicycle project, and the second one, BGE, Biodiversity Genomic Europe. There's more information behind those links as well if you're interested. Apart from that, there's positioning ELIXIR as a go-to partner in European projects. We're now talking about the area of biodiversity, but also really leveraging the ELIXIR platforms. So all the necessities around data, interoperability, compute resources and tools, as well as training to then support biodiversity research at a larger scale. We're moving on to the federated human data community, as you can see, and that's also the case in many of the other communities. The co-leads really come from a number of different nodes representing all of the ELIXIR framework and our members, giving all the diversity that we're having as well. Their mission and vision is to develop long-term strategies for managing and accessing sensitive human data. And they want to do so, or they aim to do so, and they are actually having quite a lot of success with that as well already, is to position the federated EGA framework as the core infrastructure driver to support human data sharing for research use cases from nationally, European Commission and/or internationally funded human health data sharing projects. And it is a great pleasure to also share with you that as of September 2022, 5 inaugural federated EGA nodes have been announced. You can see them highlighted on the map on this slide here. So it's Finland, Germany, Norway, Spain, and Sweden, and there's expected to be many more in the close future as well.
Our next community is the food and nutrition community. This is headed up by 4 co-leads in the top right. Their mission and vision is to standardize, connect, and model the data pipeline, as well as looking at the standardization of food behavior data. They published their white paper last year on the future of food and nutrition in ELIXIR, and they are currently working on their first implementation study on food and nutrition, the microbiome, diet, and health. Looking at some of their highlights, they had their first workshop for this implementation study in September of last year in Tarragona, and this was linked to NUGO Week. So NUGO is a larger food and nutrition organization. So it's nice to link the ELIXIR community in with the wider community. This community also has links to data integration and data generation through Magnify, which looks at microbiome data, and Metabolites, which looks at metabolomics experiments.
Great. Moving on to the Galaxy community, their mission and vision is to foster a Galaxy community in Europe, because many of you know that Galaxy is a global initiative with a lot of activities going on. So to really, together with Galaxy, work on resources and training. And it's also about monitoring, fostering that the use of Galaxy in ELIXIR is promoted and done in the right way. So some of the goals are around building the European network with a large focus on training as well, so that the infrastructure and the services can actually be used. And this involves not only, but also access and transfer of data, integration, tools, and most formally also looking at the FAIR principles and how they are represented in Galaxy itself. There are quite a lot of highlights around the Galaxy community, so I do want to spend a little bit of time on this slide here. So more than 240,000 workflows are available in Galaxy itself, with more than 900,000 workflow invocations in general, and there's more than 200 free tutorials about data analysis. So this really very much links to the initiative of Galaxy Training, which is very prominent as well. And to highlight there's a Smorgasbord 2023 event coming up in May. It's a free global online week of Galaxy Training, which is happening across different time zones. And maybe if you out there would even like to contribute to this as a trainer or as somebody who has experience as a tutor, there is an opportunity to also get engaged for you. So I've mentioned the international components here, and Galaxy also does have a lot of international collaborations. And in the kind of context of ELIXIR, I'd like to highlight their collaboration with the Australian Biocommons. The European Galaxy server, one of them is hosted in Freiburg, so the link is on the slide as well. And it's also great to say that the community co-leads are involved in leading the Euroscience Gateway project, which has kicked off in the autumn last year and is really looking into delivering a robust, scalable, seamlessly integrated open infrastructure for data-driven research. ELIXIR's Human Copy Number Variation community has published a white paper in 2022 and is currently working on 2 implementation studies. They aim to make it easier to detect, annotate, and interpret human copy number variations. And as such, they're also looking at the detection pipelines that can be used to do so. They're working on a lot of reference databases for HCNV identification and looking into data exchange formats, apart from the other 2 goals, which you can see here. Highlighting, I wanted to say that the 2 implementation studies are ongoing. What you can see on the right is the CNV detection tool that they're using. And the community members are promoting the implementation of Beacon on CNV resources as well. So just for everybody who's not aware, the Beacon network is a search engine across the world's beacons, and it enables global discovery of genetic mutations federated across a large and growing network of shared genetic data sets. The IDP community, intrinsically disordered proteins, as part of the ELIXIR Communities portfolio, develops standards, tools, and resources to help identify and characterize IDPs. And this is done by simplifying IDP data access and dissemination, looking into curation, but also centralized knowledge bases, and really using and integrating IDP data into ELIXIR core data resources to then improve the analysis that can be done with the available data. Highlighting here are links to IDP Fun, which is an international consortium aiming to extend their knowledge on the functions of IDPs in general, as well as a link to IDP Central, which, as you can see in the visual, is a bidirectional road to capture data from individual databases around Europe in this case, and to then really bring it all together in an umbrella consortium for central management of those protein disorder related tools and databases. The IDP community co-leads are also leading a cross-protein cluster activity in ELIXIR, combining efforts and outcomes from the IDP Proteomics and 3D Bioinfo community. The marine metagenomics community has 3 co-leads as well, and the white paper has already been published in 2017, so it is one of our most mature communities. And that might also explain why they're currently working on transitioning towards a slightly wider, broader scope, looking at the microbiome also in different contexts. So they are working on a white paper, which will then also be shared for review across the ELIXIR community once ready. At the marine metagenomics community, they're really focusing on developing a sustainable metagenomics infrastructure to nurture research and innovation in the marine domain. And much of this has also been achieved during the time since their establishment all the way until now. So this kind of reflects in the services that this community is linked to and offering in one way or another. And to highlight some, we have already heard of Magnify to submit, analyze, discover, and compare microbiome data. But there's also IT ZoneDB as well as the Marine Metagenomics portal. The Metabolomics community looks at providing resources, analysis tools, and infrastructures to help metabolite identification. And their goals are to create and extend metabolomics data sets. They also develop data analysis workflows for the metabolomics field and promote data standards and interoperability in metabolomics itself. Apart from that, they support computing with large-scale metabolomics data, and they're looking into increasing the metabolomics training which is available. And one thing to highlight here is the very successful ELIXIR Fluxomics training school, which they carried out for the first time in 2021. And they currently also having plans and looking into repeating that successful endeavor to really keep training more and more people in that area. They work with experimental scientists and developers to provide the resources, analysis tools, and infrastructure that will help the metabolite identification. And to highlight as well is that they're really exploring at the moment collaborations with industry to establish data standards for data producers or the data producing companies, and looking into hosting a workshop during the current year.
The microbial biotechnology community helps to develop tailor-made microbes and biological systems. Some of their goals include building scalable microbial genome scale metabolic models and developing a knowledge-based infrastructure, as well as semantic ontology for microbial biotechnology, and developing training and community engagement in microbial biotechnology. There are currently 2 co-leads, and there is an open call for a 3rd co-lead at the moment. So if you are interested or considering applying, please look into that or reach out. They currently have 1 implementation study ongoing, and some of their highlights include a webinar that they did on the community activities, as well as the ELIXIR Knowledge Exchange Scheme. They have a project proposal out, which will enable them to work with industry and look at developing some areas more there.
The plant sciences community in the portfolio is also one of the ones that has been around for a very long time. You can also see that reflected in the fact that they have been working on a number of implementation studies so far. And they look at developing an infrastructure to facilitate genome phenotype analysis of crop and tree species. And the goals are, again, really around the fair data principle to making plant research data visible, findable, and sustainable, specifically when it comes to their access. They've been working really hard on standards, and I'll show you some 2 examples on the next slide. That also links to community recommendations and to really ensure crosstalk between the researchers to then be able to disseminate best practices. So the highlights, as you can see here, is a very nice illustration of the community goals, which describes the data lifecycle, showing some of the tasks that they have been working on. So again, data integration, analysis, visualization, storage, public action and sharing, data finding, and data processing. And to the top right, there are the 2 examples. One is MyAPI, the minimum information about plant phenotyping experiments, an open community-driven data standard designed to harmonize data from plant phenotyping experiments, as well as BRAPI, the breeding API, which both of these products really are outcomes that have been shaped by members and the plant community itself. On a different note, the plant community itself and several of their members is represented in the AgroSurf project, where together with 2 other community members, we are leading a work package around data management. The ELIXIR Proteomics community has published their white paper in 2017, and we currently have 3 co-leads across 3 different ELIXIR nodes as well. They develop and maintain sustainable proteomics tools and data resources, and they do so by improving how proteoform data is collected and integrated with other omics data. They develop data processing and analysis pipelines in proteomics and also look into helping standardize data management and annotation in proteomics. What you can see in this visual is part of the white paper itself. They have identified 3 areas of interest around multi-omics integration, reproducible open analysis pipelines, as well as data management and annotation. And they're working their way through all of these with the different implementation studies that they're having. One example is PRIDE, which is an ELIXIR core data research, core data resource, and is a global standard for mass spectrometry data and of functional importance for the proteomics user community. Moving on to the rare diseases community, we can also see that they are one of the ones which have been around in ELIXIR from the very beginning. Their mission is to support development of new therapies for rare diseases. So it is about coordinating with rare disease research activities related to data resources, tools, and services to then also move on towards training the researchers, but in this case also clinicians and the community out there that is in touch with rare diseases itself to really make efforts and use whatever is available to pull it together and make use of what we know to then also together move further. Some of their activities are connected to the RD Connect project, and you can have a look at the webinar which they gave very recently. And as you can really nicely see in that visual, it's all about the user interface, then the data, how it flows, where it sits, and how it can be leveraged to then link to diagnosis and gene discovery. Apart from that, there's a rare diseases registry on the ELIXIR Bio.tools website available as well, and that really is a catalog of resources useful for rare diseases researchers.
The next community is single-cell omics, which in contrast to rare diseases is one of the newest communities. They published their white paper just last year on community-driven ELIXIR activities in single-cell omics. Their mission and vision is to identify and address challenges in single-cell and spatial omics. And they have an ongoing implementation study that they've just started on single-cell omics networks for ELIXIR, or as they like to abbreviate it, to SCON. There are 3 co-leads, and some of their highlights on the next slide include the fact that they have been formed out of really a growing need for single-cell omics. So these 2 graphs at the top, you can see there is an increase in the number of articles published, the number of cells sequenced, the total number of single-cell tools that were published. So this community is formed out of the need for training and knowledge around this. And their first implementation study meeting was held at the end of last year. The next community is systems biology. This is also one of the newer communities. They existed prior to being an ELIXIR community and are active and very large as well. Their mission and vision is to make systems biology modeling a central pillar of research in biology. And they are looking at strengthening standardization and interoperability, looking at modeling technologies, building capacity and training, and fostering industrial and societal embedding. A white paper was published last year, and they also have just started their implementation study at the beginning of this year. So you can see here, they previously existed as a focus group, and just a little bit more on their implementation study. They're looking at fairness in systems biology. So this really speaks to some of their goals, and some of the use cases are metabolism and health and disease, in toxicology, and in an industry setting. Our next and final community in the list is toxicology. This community supports the integration of standards, tools, and resources to aid toxicology research projects. They are trying to align open solutions from toxicology research with ELIXIR services and resources to connect toxicology research with the ELIXIR platforms and communities, and also to develop open community standards, which we'll see some examples of just now. They published their white paper, last year and their implementation study is currently under preparation. They also have an open call for one community co-lead. So again, if you're interested in applying, please reach out or have a look at the weekly brief. Some of their highlights include we're expecting the implementation study to be presented during the course of this year. Some of their open collections include the Fair Sharing Toxicology collection, and they also have a bioschemas collaboration, which led to the chemical substance profile. And just next week, some of the members will be presenting at the European project meeting for eTransafe. So this is the final meeting and has to do with toxicology and models and how to streamline the pipeline in drug discovery.
That's the 15 communities. It's always nice to see it all in one place, but we can also understand that it is quite a lot of information. But as we said, you will get access to all those slides and can really use them as a resource. We would be also keen to hear what we might add to the highlights that we have presented today and keep working on those. So just to wrap it up, a couple of community activities and engagement across the whole ELIXIR Communities portfolio. And it also is a summary of highlights where communities are and what their core role is within the infrastructure itself. So they really are our go-to groups of people working in a certain area of expertise. Communities and their members give us input on the most up-to-date scientific developments, and they're an integral part of and often driving the infrastructure developments. As communities, they also have opportunities to engage in funding proposals whenever they are available in the right area of interest. And it really is a connection to form a pan-European network, also establishing links to a broader European and global initiative itself. So what about the future of communities? I know many of you have had that question and will have the question in the future. I'm going to give you a really brief insight on how communities will be acting in the 2024 to 2028 ELIXIR scientific program. So first of all, platforms and communities will remain as functional units in the program itself. And what you can see at the left side of the slide here are the 4 strategic tiers that this program will be covering. And they're focusing on science, technology, nodes, as well as people. And the priority of each tier will drive the delivery of the program's ambitions through targeted investments. So that really means that we are looking into having communities team up with platforms or focus groups to work together to accomplish the mission and the goals that ELIXIR is setting itself for that time frame of 5 years, starting in January next year. As for the communities, there might be some subtle changes around how the community activities will be reviewed, but really also in a sense of the hub and us and others in this infrastructure, letting them know what you are doing, what you would be needing to be enabling that crosstalk between some of those other people and members of the ELIXIR research infrastructure, and the co-leadership assignment might be updated in some way or the other as well. And with this, really just what is next for you? Do you want to join a community? Are you already part of a community? Or maybe there's a value in spreading the word across your nodes, across your networks. And as we said, not only within ELIXIR, but also beyond, make use of the efforts that the communities are making and bringing to the really wider research community with a small c. And please do get in touch if you have any questions.